Check the description for the following discount codes. Finally managed to get my hands on one of these Thrustmaster T818s after the first time I tried to order one and the website just wasn't working back in December or whenever it was. So today is going to be my review. This is of course their first entry into the world of direct drive wheelbases, and it claims a continual output of 10 Newton meters. So a tiny bit more than say the CSL-DD or the Moser R9, but obviously less than something like the Fanatic DD1 and of course DD2 and the larger, you know, Simucube boys. So it's sort of a entry mid-tier direct drive wheelbase from a strength point of view, and I can already tell you for most people the 10 Newton meters it puts out, and I believe that's continuous because it is what it says, it doesn't give us a peak torque figure. It's probably going to be plenty, you know. There's always those people out there, those of you that like really, really heavy force feedback, but I'm not one of those people. So for me, this would be enough, just like the Moser R9 would be, or the Fanatic CSL-DD would be. That's plenty. I don't run very heavy force feedback. So before we get into the details of everything, this wheelbase currently PC only, and so, you know, console users obviously out the question. Would I recommend it as an alternative to a CSL-DD or a Moser R9 or the Alpha Mini, all similar sort of torque figures? I think the answer is probably, unless you happen to own a lot of Thrustmaster wheels already, maybe you've got a collection of different Thrustmaster wheels, the answer is probably no. I'd recommend one of the others. The R9, of course, being at the bottom of the list for me because I didn't have a good experience with that. So that's a TLDR, but let's get into the actual unit itself now and go into details as to why I probably wouldn't recommend it unless you happen to own 10 Thrustmaster wheels already. So first things first, we'll have a little look round the unit. We've got this quick release at the front here, which is super fast and easy to do. I'll demonstrate that with a wheel in a minute. And we've got some pogo pins inside there for your connectivity. We've got an LED hexagon around there. We've got some cooling fins at the top and at both sides. And on the bottom, we've got 4 M6 bolt holes. These don't match up to anything that currently exists. They are 63mm apart, left to right. I haven't actually measured front to back, but I just had to drill my GT Amiga Titan, you know, 4 new holes to fit that in. At the back, we've got the on and off button, which is a physical on and off switch rather than a soft switch. It does go in and out. We've got the power supply input, USB-C, an RJ45 for future accessories, and a bespoke RJ12 for pedals, as it indeed says on the back there. There's also this little sort of blank here, and behind that there are some solder pads where it looks like something could be soldered to in the future. That obviously isn't something they'd want you to do yourself, so I'm a little curious as to why it's there. I'm sure they wouldn't be sending out, you know, solder kits for people to upgrade their wheels in some way or another, but nonetheless they are in there. If you see Barry at the Sim Racing Garage's video, he's popped his out and you can see the pins. I don't think I can get mine out without a little screwdriver. No, it's not going to come out. It came out, I had a look and I put it back again, ready for this. But yes, there is some solder pads in there. We've got a little mesh at the front here. These metal plates can be changed for different colours. And then we've got what's called action buttons here and here, which show up in the control panel as buttons 22 and 23. And then there is a mode button beside that there, and an accompanying LED. And then what we've got is a force feedback like cut-off button. It literally does what it says, which is if you hit it, then the force feedback stops. The wheel still registers its position, but there'll be no feedback from the motor. So perhaps in case, it's like, you know, a halfway emergency stop. So it doesn't cut the wheelbase off completely, whereby you couldn't continue to drive, but you just lose all your force feedback. But at least you could finish the race in case it was, you know, going weird in some way or another, I don't know, massive oscillation or something that you couldn't stop. So that's what's on the side there. That's what's on the back, along with model numbers and what have you. And yes, that's what's on the underneath just those 4 points for bolting it down. Now most of this is constructed of plastic, or what I believe to be a reinforced nylon. So it feels a little bit like the Logitech wheelbase, whereby you don't get that premium feel like you do with some of the other high-end direct drive wheelbases. Now these little interchangeable plates are actually metal, and obviously the 4 M6 bolt holes in the bottom are metal, and they go into a bracket that the motor itself is secured to. But then the housing of the motor is also this sort of nylon type plasticky stuff, which almost feels like aluminium. In fact, it's what the quick release is made of as well, and you may have seen this in some other reviews. It almost sounds and feels a bit like aluminium. So it's very, very stiff and solid, but obviously not as much as if it was really metal. And we'll talk about the quick release in a minute, because that is one of the negatives. Not this piece here as such, but the fact that the whole thing is made of nylon or plastic, whatever it actually is. But that's the overall build quality is good. Again, the fit and finish of the plastic is good, just like the Logitech one is. It doesn't feel cheap. There's not nasty, sharp edges sticking out anywhere, you know, that I noticed, and everything looks symmetrical and as it should be. So for plastic, the fit and finish is good, but it is, you know, mostly plastic. But then we need to talk about the price as well. It's currently on the Thrustmaster website, £599 for just the wheelbase. And that comes with one quick release adapter for use with existing Thrustmaster wheels. So it's not mega money, but it's not mega cheap either. And again, we'll take that into account, like the Logitech wheelbase, which has a couple more newton meters of torque, as best as we can compare, because they don't give us a peak figure with this, you know, is nearer £1,000, whereas this is only 600. So it's quite a difference in price there. And like I say, in use, the strength of this motor is plenty, for me at least. Aesthetics wise, this is a very personal thing. Do you like the look of it? I mean, I don't think it looks bad. The Logitech one I really didn't like because it was huge, but this is quite a compact unit, and I don't think it looks bad. And you guys see, you can choose different colour plates to go on there either. So fit and finish is good. I think it looks okay in its appearance. The force feedback strength is definitely enough. We'll get on to how it feels, detail and responsiveness in a little while, but let's sort of continue with the build quality type pathway and talk about this quick release adapter. Now, if you've got an existing Thrustmaster wheel, you'll be used to seeing this collar, because that is what screws onto the back of a Thrustmaster wheel, as you're all familiar with. Now, I had no trouble, so let's just, in fact, we may as well install it. You've got your DIN socket there and your DIN plug there, and this sort of T-shape, or cross shape, sorry, is of varying sizes, so you can't put it in the wrong place. So you put it in, and then you use the collar to, in fact, yeah, that way around. Use the collar to do it up and pull that in there nice and snug. Now, I had no issue getting this on at all, literally all the way up to the seam there. I remember Barry at the SRG had to use a pair of grips to get it on, but mine's gone on with no trouble at all. What I did have that was ball achy was trying to get this back off again. I'll slide it onto here first of all, just to show you how quick the quick release is. Again, this is keyed in here. You know, it's a very obvious shape, so you can't put it in wrong. So it literally just goes in like that and clamps down. So that is nice and quick and easy. Far faster than the Fanatic one, for example. And with the Fanatic one, if any of you got it, you'll know it's quite stiff, and you end up like wiggling the wheel to get it off, and often come close to spanking yourself in the face. So we've got none of that here. This will undo like that and then just slide straight out without any resistance at all. So the quick release functionality is good, but there is a fair bit of flex in this. I'll put a video clip up of it now. In this quick release, in the adapter that goes on the back of the wheel, and as you'll see in the video clip here, in the steering wheel itself, because this wheel, like all the Thrustmaster wheels that exist at the moment, are not made specifically for this direct drive wheelbase, and they're just not that stiff a wheel. Now, in use, I didn't really feel it flex noticeably. Again, I test things how I would run them, because obviously that's a fair comparison. There's no point me turning the force feedback up to 100% and complaining about something that I'm not used to, because I don't run my force feedback that high. So when I compare wheelbases, I compare my experience, one versus another, set up exactly how I would want to use them in real life, you know. I do turn the force feedback up to 100 just to feel the strength of everything, but it's not how I actually race. Now, yeah, in use, you do notice a little bit of flex, but it's not overwhelming. It's not distracting. But if you've got Thrustmaster wheels, you're used to that anyway, because even on the TSPC Racer, which is their sort of top wheelbase, you know, or the T818, the one down, they've all got these plasticky quick releases. In fact, they're not even as stiff as this one. And so they all flex a little bit anyway, and the wheels, of course, are exactly the same. So there is a bucket load of flex all round, really, and that is, you know, a big drawback. Things that would need to be done to solve that is a fully metal quick release and output shaft flange, and steering wheels specifically designed to be free of flex. And, you know, Thrustmaster have said they will be releasing some direct drive specific wheels, so hopefully the steering wheels themselves will be more rigid, but the quick release mechanism is, of course, still going to be the same. Now, I mentioned earlier there was no ball ache getting this onto the steering wheel, but when I tried to get it off, I just undo that. You obviously pull it off like this. Getting this piece out was a right ball ache. It's been out twice now, so we'll see whether it will come out or not. No, it won't. So what I had to do was get a screwdriver and lever it out using these little gaps around the edges, bit one side, bit the bottom, bit the other side, bit the top, until it gradually works its way up. So if you've only got one of these quick release adapters, say the one that comes with a wheelbase, but you've got 10 wheels, you know, GT3, Formula One, Rally, whatever you might have, and you want to change between them, you'll need a knife or a screwdriver or something to start levering these back out with, or you have to buy another quick release adapter, which I believe are about 35 quid. Let's have a little peek on here. 34.99. So if you've got 10 wheels is probably a bit over the top. Most people don't have 10 wheels. Maybe you've got 3 wheels for your different types of racing you like to do that I just mentioned. So you'd have to spend another £35 for each wheel to have their own quick release adapter, because otherwise it's a right ball ache to get it in and out. And the other question that instantly springs to mind is, if you do have to keep levering these in and out, how long is it going to be before you get play in that plasticky fitment? You know, it might be a long time, but it also might be a very short time, in which case you'll have more play in addition to the play in the wheel and the play in the quick release mechanism itself. So I don't like that. It's not really the way it should be. And 35 notes for a plastic adapter. I mean, yes, it's got some pogo pins in there, you know, to pass the electronics through, but still, 35 notes is strong money for an adapter, especially as it doesn't like to come out of the wheel for you to use it in another one. Anyway, that's fit and finish, covered the ports and the switches and the buttons and the quick release. Torque, as I say, is about 10 Newton meters, which I find plenty. It probably peaks, you know, because they say it's a continuous figure, so it probably peaks at what, 12, 14, something like that, at a total guess. Obviously, they don't say, so it's impossible to tell. Let's now have a quick peek. In fact, let me just show you the power supply quickly. Power supply, build quality, good, just like the build quality of this, plastic, but with a nice fit and finish. There's no rubber feet on it, but there are slightly raised bumps there to keep it, you know, from being flat and flush on a surface. There is an LED to show it's powered on, and the seams are nice and not sharp, and they're all symmetrical. Power rating is 24 volts at 7 amps, so 168 watts on the output side. And it is branded X in S power. If that means anything to anybody, doesn't mean much to me, but there you are, that's what that is. So let's just plug it in, because I'm going to show you the software. I'll do some screen capture of that in a minute. The LEDs come on, just about make that out. I haven't got enough length to show you any more. I'm sure most of us have enough length most of the time in life, just not at this moment. So this goes in here, and this actually is a slightly fiddly connector. It feels a little bit flimsy, and it's a bit fiddly to get back out, although I literally did it perfectly then first time. That's the only time that's happened. The little lever here, you have to push in there, and because it's almost flush with this, it's actually the first few times I took it out was quite fiddly, but maybe I've just got the knack now. And then of course we've got the USB-C to go in here. And hopefully when I turn the power on, yeah, it comes to life. Now it actually calibrates itself even without a wheel on, and you may or may not see the, oh, you can see the LED hexagon is lit up there as well. Now, what's slightly weird about this is, so when it's powered down, just to turn the power off again, you can feel like that notchiness you get, I guess, from the magnets around the outside of the motor. You can feel that. That's quite normal in a lot of direct drive wheelbases. You can't actually see me turning it, but then you can't actually feel what my fingers are feeling either. But you can see, yeah, you can see how far I'm going before I hit what feels like a different segment. So you can feel that. As soon as you power it up and it's calibrated itself, that goes away, and it is perfectly smooth to turn in operation. You don't feel any notchiness at all. But what you do feel is a tiny little vibration through it the whole time it's powered up. And not just through quick release adapter, with the wheel on, you can feel it through the wheel as well. It's almost like a really subtle engine vibration effect. And we've not even got a sim loaded here, I'm just in the control panel on my computer here. So you can feel it vibrating away, which is really, really strange. Then when you move it, that instantly stops and it's perfectly smooth. There's no vibration at all. Go to and I can hear that. I wonder whether my mic will pick it up. Let's have a little listen. But yeah, I don't know whether you'll hear that or not, but it's like a little engine rumble. It isn't obviously supposed to do it. Or I mean, it's not an effect, it's not a game effect, because there's no game loaded. But as soon as you move it, it stops. But otherwise, when you're sat still, you can feel this little vibration through the steering wheel. I noticed it straight away when I was testing it out in Dirt Rally or ACC, whichever it was I tried first. And I'll put some screenshots. I'll put some video up of me trying this out in both those sims in a second. In fact, I'll do that now before we go on to the software, and I'll just briefly talk about the driving experience. As I mentioned in the beginning, I think the power is plenty for most people with that 10 Newton meters of continuous force feedback. You know, it's an entry to mid-level direct drive wheelbase for £599. We can't really expect much more than that sort of power, so that's absolutely fine. Now, in Dirt Rally, I didn't really have any trouble getting it configured and driving to how I like it. But there are presets in the Thrustmaster control panel that you can choose from. So in fact, let me do some screen capture and stick that up for you on the screen as well. And this is where the software kind of falls down a little bit, because one of the things a lot of us like to do with our force feedback on our direct drive motors is tweak it to exactly how we want it to be. And if we bring this up, I'll put it up on the screen now. If we go to the, I mean, this is the default screen where you can set your wheel rotation. And in fact, if I turn the wheelbase now without a steering wheel on, it still registers the input as if the wheel was there. So you can see that on the axis here. And you've got your buttons all down here. So as you can see, if I press these action buttons on the wheelbase, they register as 22 and 23. The mode button doesn't, because that is a mode switching button on the wheelbase rather than an input like you would see here. But yes, if we then go to the gain settings, This master gain is set to 70 or 75 by default, and you have to click this padlock to unlock it and put it up to 100%, which obviously I've done. And then you've got your damper, and then all there is a choice of 4 different modes here: comfort, sport, performance, and extreme. Now, the difference between these is basically like smoothing or filtering. On comfort, the wheel feels absolutely horrible and spongy and rubbery almost, just totally over-filtered and over-smoothed. And then on extreme, this is in my experience, of course, everything is way overblown, way too much detail, the wheel's leaping around all over the place like a lunatic. I settled on performance, and even then it was a little bit much. You can play around with the damper a little bit, but that's all you have to play with. There really isn't bugger all to choose from. And there's, this bottom piece here is literally adjusting the LED settings. And that's all we have. So very little to adjust in the way of software, which is a bit disappointing for a lot of us. Especially when those if you don't like one of those 4 presets, maybe one's a bit too much or one's not quite enough, you've got nowhere in between to go, which is, as I say, irritating. Now, I had a couple of problems in ACC with this. The first one was I couldn't find a comfortable setting. It was either too smoothed and filtered, or the wheel was jumping around really erratically, and I just couldn't find a decent setting for it at all. Just didn't feel right no matter what I did. The second problem I had, and I'll put a video clip of this up now, is huge oscillation. Self-induced oscillation once you let go of the steering wheel. And I could not get rid of this aside from reducing the overall force feedback strength down to something stupidly low, like 10%, at which point you may as well have not had any force feedback because the wheel was so light, you weren't getting anything through it. I strength-wise, I settled on about 55%. In game, this is. I leave the control panel set at 100, so I've got it all available. Depending on the game, you want to use it, and you might need more or less. But I had to bring it from 55 down to like 10 to get rid of the oscillation that you've just seen in that video there. So again, this is a software problem, and without the ability to properly tune the wheelbase by just having those presets, it's something I couldn't get rid of. In fact, it didn't matter which preset I used, whether I used comfort or all the way up to extreme, the oscillation still persisted. It just varied slightly in its intensity. So for ACC, just don't get a good experience at all with this wheelbase. And I am on the latest firmware for both the wheelbase and the quick release as well. You'd have seen that actually in the screen capture for the control panel that I showed up at the time of recording, of course. If they release a new one between recording and me getting the video up, then it won't be the latest anymore. But it was at the time. So ACC, can't get comfortable, accurate force feedback. It's either too much or too little, and there's huge amounts of oscillation. Dirt Rally 2 wasn't too bad. Managed to find a reasonably comfortable position using performance in the Thrustmaster control panel, and then tweaking things in game to how I like them. So that wasn't too bad. But overall, with this wheelbase, I think there's too many negatives for it to be a recommend. It's sitting here like kind of vibrating away. Now I can hear it, and if I put my fingers on the tip of the shaft, I can feel it as well. And as I say, if I put the steering wheel on, it doesn't make any difference. It's not like because the wheel's not plugged in, we've got some weird things going on. Now I can just feel it through the steering wheel instead. And again, as soon as I move it, stops, goes silent. In fact, I'm gonna hold the mic again just in case you can hear that. And then if I move the wheel, and if I stop the wheel. Yeah, I don't know whether you'll hear that or not, but it's a continual twitching or vibration. So that's not good. The driving experience in the 2 titles that I'm most familiar with wasn't good. I did try it in the original AC and in one of the F1 games. I don't think I've got the latest one, but the previous one. Just out of curiosity. But it's Dirt Rally and ACC that I'm most familiar with, so obviously that makes sense to do my testing with them because I put them all, get it all how I'd normally have it, and then drive, and obviously I can see how each wheelbase compares. So bad driving experience, bad quick release and wheel adapter construction, bad flexible wheels themselves are all that's available currently on the market. Weird bolt pattern, so you either need to buy their adapter plate, which is, let me just get rid of this control panel. Adapter plate's 35 quid, cockpit mounting kit, yeah. Like, it's another 35 notes just to be able to bolt it to a more common bolt pattern. Like, not really necessary, could have just made the bolt pattern suitable anyway. As I say, I drilled my tighten out, so that's what I had to do. What else did I not like? So yeah, I didn't like the quick release construction, didn't like the adapter, don't like the bolt spacing, don't like this weird vibrating nature. In fact, if I put it just there, it's actually stopped. Oh, that's weird. Now I can put it in some places where it doesn't do it, and other places where it does. Either way, there's something weird going on there. Yeah, and in the software, a distinct lack of tunability. So the overall package, and the fact that you might need to buy more of these quick releases for 35 notes each, depending on how many wheels you've got, because they're a bugger to try and get back out, I just don't really see it as a compelling buy, to be honest. Like I say, the only people that might want to buy this are people that have a collection of Thrustmaster wheels already, but then you're going to have to buy a collection of adapters, and you're going to have to hope that your favourite title isn't ACC, because for me, and all my tweaking and tuning, which there's very little to do, I just couldn't get a good experience with it. So, I mean, I'll slap a link in the description in case some of you particularly want to go buy it. If I'll find an Amazon one, I'll stick that in there for you. But personally, I'd be looking at either the Logitech or the Mozart R9 if the quality is where it should be these days, or the Fanatec CSL-DD, or the equivalent for console if you're a console user. I'm just not really seeing much in the way of appeal for buying this one. I mean, I do prefer the look of this over the Logitech one, but the Logitech one performed so much better. In all the titles I tried it in, it was all pre-configured straight out of the box. This is probably down to the drivers and the software. There was much more to tweak. There wasn't a weird vibration that disappears when you turn the wheel. The quick release was better. It was just a better wheelbase apart from the way it looked, and it had a little bit of extra torque as well. Or actually, it could be comparable. We don't know what the peak is of this, but I think that's probably enough waffle. What are we at? 28 minutes. Bloody hell, that's gone on for ages. Any questions? As always, stick them in the comments. But I think for me, this is probably a don't recommend unless you absolutely have to. For some reason, maybe it's all you can get in your country. Maybe it's all that's in. If it was all that's in stock, I'd just wait for stock or something else, because it just doesn't give me the experience that I would want from a direct drive wheelbase. Either way too much detail and over the top, or it's all like rubber and spongy and just it's never. You just can't get it how you want it. Anyway, I've been through it all. As always, thank you very much for watching, and take it easy.